would focus my energy on that review sheet. I would make sure I knew what I was doing there. So who has a question about something?
Can we do number 39 on P5?
P5,
It's
39. 39. Solve it graphically. T minus 8 equals 2. Absolute value. All right, now, let's first of all solve it not graphically, because we need to know how to do that too. So, T minus 8 equals 2. We're going to solve that solve that without our calculator. So I'm still going to do it on the number line. And what number am I going to put right in the middle of that number line? 8. And then I'm going to count back and forth. I'm going to put some dots here. I'm going to count back and forth. How many? 2. So that'll put me at 10 and 6. Now it's equal to. Is there any shading this time? Oh, is this my box? I wondered when I was going to get that. Okay, great. Just put it up here. Are there any special instructions? Okay, good. What's your name, Sunshine? Ike? Well, thank you. Okay, so we got 6 and 10 as the answers. Now, I'm going to graph this and hopefully get 6 and 10 as my answers. If there had been a less than here, I would shade between those two dots, right? If there's a greater than, I'm going to shade outside the dots. What I am saying should sound familiar to you. Okay, now I'm going to graph it on my calculator. So the first thing I have to do is move that 2 to the other side. So I'm going to subtract 2 to the other side. And remember, if I put it into my calculator, it's got to go in as y equals, right? Technically, it's 0 equals, but in order to get it into my calculator, I've got to make that 0 a y. Which, by the way, if I'm making the y a 0, that tells me I'm looking for points on the x-axis, because every point on the x-axis has a y that is 0, right? See how it all connects. All right, to graph this, I press y equals. Now, to get absolute value on your calculator, press the math button, which is in the first column, math. Across the menu, you got tons of numbers across, or menus across the top, math, number, complex probability. Click over to the number one, NUM, and the very first option there is absolute value. So you just hit it, and now it says y equals absolute value. Oh, no. Okay? Now, some of your calculators actually put the bars in there. Mine does not, but some of the newer ones do. And then you type in x minus 8. And then you close that off. And then hit minus 2. Now, I did not change my window from yesterday, so I have no idea if I'm going to see what I need. This is what I see. I did not change my window. I just typed it in with the window I had, and this is what I see. Now that probably isn't good enough, because what am I looking for? Anytime I'm solving graphically, any kind of equation, if I'm solving graphically, what am I looking for? The x-intercepts. So I'm going to go back to my window, and I'm going to make my x max bigger. And then I'll graph it again. And now I see this. Now, did you all remember absolute values are supposed to be these? And you got a nice little view there. Okay. So now I'm going to find these 2 points. You know how to do that, right? Second calc, 0, and left in, or left bound, right bound, all that stuff. And you're going to come up with 6 and 8. These are 6 and 8. This is an example of a problem where it is much easier, quicker, more efficient just to do it than it is to graph it. But you can graph it. Dylan?
I did the absolute value of x minus 8. should have created out of the box and then -2, and I got 6 and 10.
What did I get? Oh, I got 6 and 10 too. I just wrote down 6. I got 6 and 10 too. I wrote down the wrong thing. Yeah, that's what you should get, is 6 and 10. Where the dots are is the answer.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, now quick comment. If this had been instead of equals, if this had been, let's say, a greater than. So if you were going to graph an inequality, I would do everything exactly the same in terms of graphing it on my calculator. But then I would look at it and say, okay, this is where it equals 0. Here is where it's greater than 0, because in terms of y's, what does greater than 0 mean? Above. So my answer would be negative infinity to 6 and 10 to infinity. If it had been a less than, then I would look at the part that is below, negative y's, below. So you can do inequalities on your calculator. We had one on the worksheet. All right, can anybody else think of anything we need to do? Last call for questions.
What are we doing?
We're starting 1-1. Yeah, we're starting 1-1, but part of it we've already done because we're advanced. Okay, I'm going to say it one more time. As much as I joke about trying to ruin your life, I really don't try to ruin your life. If you know your review sheet, you should be okay tomorrow. If you haven't taken time and care and studied with your review sheet, you'll probably struggle tomorrow. All right? So if you haven't done that yet, spend some time with it. Maybe you did it once, maybe you need to do it again for extra practice. I know I did some in class, a lot in class actually. If you just sat there and watched me, probably not a good idea. Go home and do them on your own. Make sure you can. Brooke?
How do you do the discriminant?
The discriminant in the quadratic formula. The discriminant is this guy right here, b squared minus 4ac. And the discriminant is important because, first of all, if it's negative, what do you know? Your roots are going to end up being imaginary. So if you're doing some kind of real world application, you probably wouldn't want your discriminant to be negative, right? Like my husband's in civil engineering, bridge design, that kind of stuff. We don't want his designs to have negative discriminants, right? We want everything to be real so we can drive on it. Okay, so the discriminant can tell me if my answers are going to be real or not. The discriminant actually has a couple of other uses. I'd like you to quickly consider two equations. Now, obviously, it's the quadratic formula. I'm looking at quadratic equations. Let's see. So we'll do that one, and we'll do this one. Okay? Now, what's the discriminant of this guy right here? The discriminant would be b squared minus 4 times a times c. What is that value? I'm just doing the discriminant. I'm not doing the whole formula, just the discriminant. What is that? $256. Thank you. Now, what's this one? B squared minus 4ac. What's that one going to be? 20? Now, believe it or not, these problems look very similar, but there's a big difference between what your answers are in this problem and this one. Now think about the whole quadratic formula. 4 plus or minus the square root of 256 over 2. 4 plus or minus the square root of 20 over 2. Now, what's the difference between these two answers? What's the square root of 256? 16. So will this answer have a radical in it? No. The answers are going to turn out to be nice, neat little answers. That means this problem factored from the beginning. If you're going to get answers that aren't radicals, it means this thing is going to factor from the beginning. And it's not that. What is it? Let's see. 6 and 10. So it factors from the beginning. If the discriminant is a perfect square, that means the radical will disappear and your answers will be nice round numbers or rational numbers. If the discriminant is not a perfect square, then that means it's simplifiable, but you're still going to have a radical, which means it does not factor. So remember back in first year algebra or 8th grade or whenever you did all that factoring, they gave you worksheets and you had to factor. And some of them didn't factor and you wasted time trying to figure out how it would make it work. If you just do a quick check of the discriminant, you'll know right away if it factors or not. If you get a perfect square, you can factor it. If you don't get a perfect square, it doesn't factor. Okay? All right, anybody else? That's kind of a vocabulary word, discriminant. Cassie, you looked a little zoned out there. You got all your questions answered?
Yeah.
Okay, well, P1 actually starts with some stuff we've already talked about. So if you have your book, if you would open it up, please, to page 81. Yep, we're starting chapter 1.
Did you say page 81?
Mm-hmm. I did. We're going to do problem number 2. Yes.
So the homework tonight, that's like to study for the test, right?
The homework due tomorrow
Yeah.
is review sheet, chapter P, the chapter P review sheet that we've done together in class, and the assigned book problems.
Period A teachers, your raffle packets have been brought to your classroom. Please distribute them to your classes today. Once again, period A teachers, your raffle packets have been brought to your classroom. Please distribute them to your classes today. Thank you.
There's the directions I wanted. Okay, so when we come back from lunch, we'll hand out the raffle packets, okay? Due on Monday, the 22nd, on the calendar in Schoology, it says page, I forget what it is, 66. Page 66, this set of problems. That and the review sheet are due tomorrow. Okay, that's your review, okay? If it says homework chapter 1, wait on that.
Yeah.
We'll do that over the weekend or next week. Okay, so now we're ready to start chapter 1. It all flows together. We're looking at, on page 81, problem number 2. Now, the word model sometimes confuses us. Don't let it confuse you. What a model is simply a way of illustrating a situation. That's it. It's a way of illustrating a situation. So we can use numbers to do that sometimes. And in problem number 2, the numbers are actually a table of values. They wrote it sideways. I like to write mine up and down. But our x's are 0 through 5. This is problem number 2. And our y's are 2, 3, 6, 11, 18, 27. All those papers should be turned in now, folks. you need to be paying attention to me now so we start off the next chapter in good shape. And then your job is to take that digital value and match it to a picture and to an equation. Now we're going to do this on our calculator, and we've already done it. We already know how to do this. So we're going to go into the calculator, and we're going to feed it this information. So you remember how you do that. How do we do that? We go to Stat, and we choose Edit, because we're going to put those numbers in. Now, I already have numbers in there, so I'm going to get rid of those numbers. If you want to just type over them, you can. Just make sure that you use them all. You don't want to keep any of the old numbers. You just want these. If you've forgotten, lean over to your neighbor. Your neighbor will help you. You've already gone through this, so we're not going to do it again. Now, we have all of our numbers in. So now we've fed it the numbers. Now, in a minute, we're going to let the calculator write an equation for us. But what don't we know right now at this moment in time?
What type of equation?
We don't know what type of equation it is, right? We're either linear or quadratic at this point. Linear means it would be a line, and quadratic means it would be a parabola. I don't know. So I'm going to go to Stat Plot, and I have to turn the plot on. Remember, if it's not on, it won't graph. I'm going to go to my window and make sure I can accommodate these numbers.
Where's Stat Plot?
It's the very first button on the calculator. Okay, we went through all this one day. We don't have time to go through it all again, guys. Lean over and ask your neighbor. And I am changing my window to accommodate all of these points. And then I'll press graph. Now, I forgot to take out my absolute value equation. So I'll press graph again. And I got something that looked like that. And the window that I used was -1 to 8 on the x's and 0 to 30 on the y's, because that took care of all my x's and my y's. And that's the picture I got. Now, what would you say that is? Is that linear or is that quadratic? That's quadratic. So now I go back to Stat, and I don't want to put any numbers in now. I'm back in, I just press Stat, I click over to Calc, and down to Linear Regression. And it tells me my equation is y equals 5x minus 1 1/3, or y equals 5x minus 4/3. My calculator says 1.33 repeating. So I matched that up. Did they give me an equation that looked like that?
Wait, which equation did you put it in as?
Linear regression.
Oh, no, it shouldn't be linear though, it should be quadratic. Didn't I say quadratic?
You said linear.
Well, I meant quadratic.
You said
I was an idiot. I meant quadratic. That's a parabola. Goodness gracious. Cancel that. This is a quadratic, so it's y equals x squared. Oh, this is unusual. We better talk about this. Okay, these are the values for A, B, and C that my calculator said. Anybody else's say this?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, let's talk about this. Unfortunately, it really doesn't matter. Your calculator is going to say this a lot of times. Something like that. Tell me about the number 1.3 times 10 to the negative 12th. It's really, really tiny. For all practical purposes, what is that? 0. So anytime you get something like that, let's call it 0. What happens is the calculator does everything logarithmically, and so when it starts doing its logarithm operations, it has a little bit of round off error, and it's very sensitive to that. So it says, hey, that's not exactly 0. Well, really it is, but the calculator has that error built in. So that's the same as 0. Anytime that comes up, and it will come up a lot, it's 0. So my equation is y equals x squared plus 2. That's my equation. Now, do I find a match for that one? Yes, it's equation, what is that, R? And do I have a picture that matches that? I downed all these, okay, on these problems they give you some tables of values, then they give you 10 graphs that you match to those tables, and they give you 10 equations that you match to those tables. So which one could it be?
Because it's quadratic formula.
Okay, let's see, it goes with the one above. So it's F, it could be F, or which one did you say? J? All right, now let's pay attention to the Y values.
Starting at 0.
I think it's F. I think it's F. Okay, pay attention to the Y values now. In J, boys and girls, the Y values are going all the way to 650. So think about what those vertical labels would have to be. They'd have to be like hundreds. That's too big. So no, we're looking at picture F. This one matches picture F. And equation R. All right, let's do one more, and then it'll be about time to go to lunch. Let's do one more. Number 5. Now, it's a different set of numbers, so we'll have to go back. How do we do that? Go back into Stat and Edit. And I'm just going to clear out my columns, but you can just type over. That same number of points, so you can just type over if you want. We're doing number 5. Now, before I hit Stat Plot, so I can see what shape this is the window I have set up. I don't know what you have set up. Am I going to have to make any adjustments here? I think X is okay, but what am I going to have to do to Y? This is going to have to be a bigger number now because I've got some points with bigger than 30. So I'll make it 40. That's my window. And now I should be able to graph it. Oh, what'd you get this time?
What'd you make your window this morning?
Right here. I left everything the same. I just changed Y to 40 because I had some points that were like 36 and 39. What's it look like? This is number 5. What's it look like to you?
Is there a way where you can connect the points to a line on the calculator?
I think there might be. I'm not sure.
So it can like look like one of these.
If we, all right, let's go ahead and, okay, what's that look like to you? What kind of regression do you think this is? Quadratic? Okay, so let's go ahead and do SAT again. Go over to Calc, and this is another quadratic one. So I ended up with, oh my gosh, look what happened. Y equals what? Negative x squared plus 40? Now, to answer the question that was just asked, let's put this equation in on our calculator. Negative x squared plus 40. So y equals negative x squared plus 40. Now when you hit graph, it superimposes that right over the top of it. So Brenton, there it is. But I physically typed this in. I think there is a way you can do it, I just don't know what it is. But I typed the equation in and it put the points in, or put the curve in for me. Okay, so which picture is that and which equation is that?
E and L.
It is equation L. Yep, I have it written backwards up there. And the picture is, where's E? I find the way this is written is confusing. Yeah, E. E is the picture. All right, so you got that part covered?
Yes.
All right. Let's go ahead and head to lunch. When we come back, I'll hand out your raffle things. You need to be back in your seat at 12:20. I don't mean walking in at 12:20, I mean in your seat at 12:20. And if you think of a review question, we'll do it when you get back. Leave your stuff in here.